Hi, my name is Jocelyn Seaburn, and this is a third grade math lesson for students over fractions. I was supposed to intern at a school here where I live in Florida. The town that I live in has a population of 80,000. It is a suburb of a larger beach city that's very touristy. There are 524 students in grades pre-K through 5 at the school that I would have worked at. 34.4% of these students are Hispanic, 32.3% African American, 29.0% white, 2.1% Asian, 1.7% mixed race, and 0.6% of students are Pacific Islanders. 76.1% of these students receive free or discounted lunch. And then as for academic performance, this school is not looking so hot when you compare them to other schools in the district. They scored 79 out of 88 schools, elementary schools, in academic performance. And overall, worse scores than 87.5% of elementary schools in the entire state. Um, there is a ratio of 14 to 1 students to teachers. 51% of the students are female, the other remaining 49% are male. And this information is accurate of 2019. So the standard that I decided to cover was understand a fraction as the quantity formed by one part when a whole is partitioned into b equal parts. Understand a fraction as the quantity formed by a parts of a size. And that is a Kansas Standard 3.NF.1. The activity that I'm covering is activity 4.3 class fractions, or I'm sorry, 14.3 class fractions. And then the standard for mathematical practice would be reason abstractly and quantitatively. And that was the second standard. Um, the objective for this lesson would be given that students have been taught three different ways to perceive fractions, students will work within their table group to model and record the fractions demonstrated, correctly completing all four tasks as a sign of mastery. Um, And this is just going to be a formative assessment, so that's why I'm not saying like 3 out of 4 points as proof of mastery. As a teacher, I just say if students all got all four of these prompts right, then I know that they've mastered the concept and we can move on. Um, and then when I refer to three different ways to perceive fractions, I'm going to be teaching with the area, set, and length model. Um, it's important to mention that this is just an introduction to fractions. So I'm going to be throwing a lot at students here in the first day just to kind of warm them up, say this is what we're going to be going over. Um, and then, of course, fractions, they aren't taught in a day. There's months that are spent on teaching fractions. So, in the following lessons, I would break down each portion of this lesson into smaller segments and we'd focus on those as a class. But again, this is just kind of an introduction. So, to get the class started, I would have a clicker survey um, just to see what they already know about fractions. After they took this, I just glance over their results real quick, kind of see where they're at. I do expect the class to have several misconceptions about fractions. As I'm teaching, I expect them to not know what the numerator or the denominator is. I expect them to be a little bit confused as to why fractions um, are written that way, but they're division problems. I expect them to not necessarily always be able to translate a picture drawing into a written fraction. And the best advice I could give myself as a teacher is students are going to be seeing fractions for the rest of their academic careers and for the rest of their lives. So for me, when there's a student struggling, I just have to give them as many examples as I possibly can. I can tell them how to write fractions. I can show them with drawings, or they can practice themselves with manipulatives. I can have them watch videos. I can have them play games. I just really need to give them all resources that I have available so that they can comprehend fractions because they're going to need to for forever. And then We are just going to have a quick pre-discussion with the class, pre-assessment as a discussion with the class, just seeing what students already know again about fractions. And then my formative assessment I talked a little bit about, and then summative, I would skip a summative. Later on, when we're finished with the fraction unit, I would have students write their own fraction word problems. And I'd probably encourage them to do that by reading a book with fraction word problems. Like, Nancy is 5.5 years old, and her mom asked her to cut the pizza into 6 parts and give her dad 1/6 of the pizza. There's all kinds of kids' books like that. Um, Anyway, so I guess I will just go ahead and, oh no, I want to talk about, this is a very simple lesson. So as far as what the teacher needs, she needs enough clickers for each student, and so with that, a smart board or presentation board of some sort. If the school that the teacher works at does not have these items, it's more than okay to print out the surveys and pass them out to students. And then she'll also need a whiteboard and dry erase markers, or a chalkboard and chalk. Students will need their own dry erase boards and dry erase markers, and then pencil and paper. Um, Classroom management, I always do the give them 5. That's a go-to for me. I've seen it in use. I've seen it as a substitute. It works really well. I have some others listed, but that's kind of my main one. Um, And let's see here. So I would say, hi students, we're going to work with fractions today. This is a concept that might be unfamiliar or even a little bit intimidating to you, but I promise by the end of the school year, you're all going to be pros. We're going to work with some illustrations, number lines, we'll do some demonstrations, and you'll even get to work with table groups today. It's going to be a lot of fun. You're going to learn a lot. Your brains are going to grow. So let's go ahead and get started. And then I would give the students the clicker survey. I had asked them table by table to go get clickers. Um, these are the questions that I included. How do you say this number? What is a numerator? What is a fraction? What part of the circle is darkened? So after students answer those, as the teacher, just quickly glance over the results. Have the students throw their clickers in the middle of their table groups so they're not touching them throughout the lesson, and then call them back and say, let's look at the board. Can anybody show me what a fraction is? Get some volunteers. I expect to see, maybe somebody writes 0.509, which of course we know as adults that decimals are fractions, so that's great if they know something like that. I expect to see maybe somebody write 3/2. I expect to see somebody draw a pie and color out one part of the pie. But even if they can recognize fractions, do they know how to use them? So what does 3/2 mean to us? What part of that pie is colored? Do you know what 0.509, do you know how that's said? Anyway, things like that. So they'll learn all that throughout the lesson. So I'd thank them for their good answers, and then I'd start by doing an area model with the students. So I would go ahead and I would draw a, oops, I'm sorry, I do want to start with a circle. Start with the circle. I would split this up. I would color one part. I would tell the class that one part of the pie has been eaten, and then I would write 1. That looked funky. 1/4. And then I would say 1. I'd point to the division line. I'd say out of, and then I'd say 4. 1 out of 4 parts have been eaten. And then I would discuss with them the definition of part, whole, numerator, denominator. We talk about how there's 3/4 parts left. And then I do a couple more examples of these. Then I would ask the students to get out their dry erase boards and dry erase markers that they have at their desk, and go ahead and present them with a couple of examples that they can discuss with their table group. So I'd say, draw a square, split it into equal parts, but I would make sure to draw a square on the board that does not have equal parts. Something kind of funky, like, sorry, like this. I'd color maybe this part and this part and ask the class, do these look like they're equal in size? They'd tell me no. Then I draw a square and actually split it into 4 equal parts and say, this is what I want yours to look like. Go ahead and draw a square. It's going to be a pan of brownies divided into 4 slices. Then I would say, can you write a fraction and draw a picture for if one of the pieces of brownie got eaten? And then we do several examples like this where they can work with their group. So next we would move on to number lines. I would draw a number line on the board. I would ask the class what this is, and they should be familiar with it by 3rd grade. They've seen it before, but something they might not be used to seeing is, oops, I'm sorry, I don't know why I did that, is the boundaries as 0 and 1. I'd write 1/2 in the middle. I'd tell the class this number is set as 1/2, or 1/2. 1/2 of the number line is this way, the other half is this way. I'd explain that a few different ways just so that they understand. Then I'd erase this 1/2. I'd change it to 3/6. I'd fill in 1, 6, 2, 6, 4, 6, 5, 6. We talk about which one's greater, less than. We talk about how the number 1 is really 6, 6. Then I'd have them do examples at their table again. Then we would move on. I would get some volunteers up to the front of the class. I'd say, let me get 6 volunteers. And then I would tell one of these students to go sit down. First, I would write this. I'm sorry, I'd write this. I'd say we have 6 students. Then I'd tell one student to go sit down. I'd say, how many do we have left? We have 5 out of 6 students left. And we had 1 out of 6 of these students leave. And I would keep doing this until they've all sat down. Then the students will probably be ready for a bit of a brain break because I just gave them a ton of information. Oops, I'm sorry. I skipped something important. I would have them, of course, practice this set model at their tables too. So I'd say, draw 5 stick people. Cross one of these stick people out, like they left. And then write how many people are left. So then they'd write 4 out of 5. They do the same thing, but they would just draw it. We do several examples of those again. Anyway, and then we do a quick brain break, which would look something like this. I get the kids to do all of these yoga poses. We do each for 30 seconds to a minute just to get them up and moving and get out of their seats, get them laughing, give their brains a bit of rest. And then we dive back into our lesson. I do a recap of all of the models. The area model, again, I draw a circle, divide that up, ask them, color some parts, ask them how many parts did I color. It'd be 3/8. I'd do a number line. I'd say, let's divide it into 12ths. What's half of 12? And be 6/12ths. Then for the set model, I would probably do something like this. I would say there were 5 stars in the sky, and one of them fell out of the sky, so now we only have 4 stars left. And I would ask them I would write a sentence for each of these on the board. So I'd put 5 stars to begin, 4 out of 5 stars left, so on and so forth. Then to move on to the formative lesson, I'd have them work with their groups. I would give them these prompts. I would say, draw a circle with equal parts, color one of these parts, write the fraction for this colored portion. I'd say, draw a number line with 4 parts, 4 equal parts. And then I would have them draw 4 cats and then write a sentence for each scenario with the cats. So write a sentence when there's all 4 cats, write a sentence when 1 cat leaves. And then for the last question, I would have them answer, why is 2/4 equal to 1/2? And so then they get to do these with their partners. I want them to work not with their whole table group. I don't want too much talking going on here. I just want them to work with their horizontal partner, and that might be a vocab word for them too. I collect these. Again, they are not for credit. They're just for me to look over as their teacher. What can I do better? What are students doing well on? What can we move on from? Um, then I tell the students they did a great job. If they felt like fractions were a little tricky, not to be discouraged because we're going to practice with them every day from here on out. Um, I thank them for their great work and tell them to look out for fractions all around them now. Maybe they notice that 1 out of 3 of the traffic lights are green, or that they lost 3 out of 5 of their mom's knives. Um, Sorry, I'm kind of running out of time. I have several reteach, enrichment, etc. modification activities. For the reteach, I would probably pass out counters and cubes, link cubes for students and have them actually model what fractions look like. And then as an enrichment, I would ask the students to look around the classroom and discuss with their table group what fractions they can recognize. So I'd give some examples like you sit out of 1/4 of the desk at your table group, or the red crayon is 1/30th of the pack, or girls make up 13/20ths of all the students in the class. For a dyslexic student, I would have them do activities. Their partner would be an ELA advanced student so that they can help this dyslexic student with their assignment if necessary. I would want to make sure to walk around and monitor this closely and make sure the dyslexic student is still getting a lot of say and the ELA student isn't taking over too much. And then English as a second language, I'd have them do the whole lesson with us. But when I do the recap, I found this awesome website where they have fraction games and you can switch the language to Spanish. And so I'd have them practice some of those on their own. And then they could still do the partner activity with a partner. If they'd prefer to work with their pair, they can do that to get some practice writing these fraction problems and the sentences in English. So, anyway, that is it. And thank you so much for listening. Sorry, that was supposed to be an hour long, and I had to condense it to 15 minutes, so it was quick. Thank you.